Some memories come with a frame around them, so they will not be forgotten. Our 6 days at the Veterans Administration was like that. We learned the horrors of war from those who were there and were touched by the beauty of these forgotten soldiers. This tape is a tribute to these men and a little-known technique to give them emotional relief from the aftermath of war. My name is Gary Craig. My associate is Adrian Fowley, and we are personal performance coaches in the San Francisco Bay Area. In August of 1994, the Veterans Administration in Los Angeles invited us to spend 6 days with the veterans of the Vietnam era to help relieve the emotional anguish these men carried in the form of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, as it is commonly known. In many cases, these men are afraid to go to sleep at night because of the nightmares they expect. They have mood swings, they sweat, they shake, they have headaches, they have bouts of anger, tears, guilt, and grief, and they are visited perpetually by memories of destruction, death, and pain. Until now, relief for this dreadful affliction has been hard to come by. Fortunately, relief is now rather easily achieved through techniques that Adrian and I have developed called EFT. They are patterned after some remarkable discoveries made by Dr. Roger Callahan and are based on the premise that the cause of all negative emotions, including PTSD, is a disruption in the body's energy system. The techniques appear strange, but are based on solid scientific principles. They require tapping on the body's energy system while the vet is tuned into the emotional problem. Doing so balances the energy meridians and produces rapid, long-lasting relief for traumatic memories. You will see this repeatedly in this tape. This videotape demonstrates these techniques and displays their power. It does not, however, purport to teach them. If you wish to learn them, you may do so through a commercially available videotape course. As you watch these sessions, please join us in saluting these valiant men. When you hear their stories, you will have, we hope, a new respect for these forgotten heroes. If you have any questions or want information on learning EFT, please contact us as follows. Our first vet is Rich, who spent his combat duty as a warrant officer in Cambodia. He was released in April of 1975 and has been undergoing therapy for his intense war-related emotional issues since 1978. These issues include over 100 intrusive memories and a severe height phobia. He has insomnia because of this and gets only 4 hours of sleep per night. Little or no headway has been made, but he keeps trying. This videotape segment starts on our second session with Rich. You're a Vietnam veteran.
Right.
Okay, and you're here at a Veterans Administration facility as a round-the-clock inpatient for PTSD.
Right.
Post-traumatic stress disorder with a number of Vietnam experiences. Height phobias and a bunch of stuff that's related to all of that. And we talked yesterday for an hour or two.
Sure.
Was it yesterday or the day before?
Well, the day before we talked for 2 hours, but we talked yesterday for a few minutes.
Yeah, but as far as sitting in that chair and you and I talking, it was
A couple days ago.
a couple days ago, right. And we seem to have taken care of a height phobia, I guess.
I've tried it at least a dozen times, and it's worked.
Yeah.
Which was
That's a dozen times.
very skeptical, but it actually worked. So actually I believe that it works. Part of the problem with PTSD is a trust factor. So it's not just the height that I had to come over. It's trusting yourself and Adrian, or anyone. So by doing the procedure, and then that night I went back. Actually, before I went out there, I didn't even test it. I went through the procedure again to make sure, because I didn't want to go out there. But since then, I've gone out there quite a few times, and it's
Without doing the procedure
without doing the procedure at all.
Rich, could we go over the height phobia, how intense it was for the camera? I know that you were needed to jump out of.
Well, I have in the service I have over 50 parachute jumps, and I was scared of heights then, but it became worse. I don't know if it was the fear of always having to jump, because it would take a 4-hour event, getting your chute ready, going down to the green ramp, sitting there, and all that played in your mind.
Sure.
So when I would, I noticed, seemed like the older I got, the more fear I had, especially going up elevators, if I went to the mall and looked over the second floor, I'd feel like I'm falling. And maybe it's not fear of heights as much as this fear of always falling when I'm looking.
Nonetheless, it's the fear when you're up high.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And that it's been with me. We have a fire escape here, which I'm okay if I go down the inside where I can't see over the railing, and I have to look straight ahead. If I look down, then it was very difficult to do. And since I did this procedure, it's very easy for me to do it.
Okay.
Without any emotional pain or anxiety.
We turn now to that first session with Rich where we eliminate his height phobia. In this session, Rich, on a 10-point intensity scale, goes to an 8 or 9 just thinking about going out on that fire escape. In fact, the mere thought of it makes the hair stand up on his legs. After using the tapping technique for only 5 minutes, Rich no longer has any fear in the stage when he just thinks about it.
Now it's moving closer. It's closer to the 1.
Closer to the 1.
In fact, I could probably look over it right now.
So now the ultimate test. Will it hold up in the real situation?
Well, I've never been able to do this.
Now, right now, are you a 1, a 2, a 5? What are you?
I'm about a 0.
About a 0. Okay, now
I don't know what a 0 is because I've never been there before, but I've never been able to lean over the railing.
And how many floors up are we? 3?
3 floors. Plus, I don't feel the anxiety that I'm going to fall.
Here's your friend?
Yeah.
Why don't you put the camera down in the front? You want to wave? Have you ever seen him do this before? No.
I'm healed! Thank you, Jesus! Thank you!
What a ham. Mental health professionals and phobia sufferers should find this result stunning. Conventional methods for phobias usually take months or years to give any relief, and even then, the relief is only partial. Just in case you are wondering about how long this result lasts, we are happy to report that the relief is usually permanent. We've helped eliminate hundreds of phobias with this technique, and typically, they never come back. Now let's return to the second session with Rich and delve into those intrusive memories that caused him so much pain. Note how rapidly EFT reduces their impact to 0.
Test a thing or two. I mean, we, among other things, 2 days ago, we went through the intrusive memories that make up your PTSD. All of, not all. We didn't go through all of your. We went through, I think, 3 or 4
3 of them
of your most intense, intensely difficult memories. The one that when they come back, they really get to you. Okay. And we were able 2 days ago to have you go through that and talk about it rather calmly. Whereas normally it got up on a scale of 0 to 10, like an 8 or a 10 or something.
Sure, there's days it got to a 10. The day I was in here, a couple of them got to 10, a couple of them I think got to 7.
Okay. But then you were able to discuss them at a level of 0, if I recall.
Right. It was a 0.
Would you mind taking the most intense of those 3 and telling the story again and then letting us know as you tell it? This is a way of testing, by the way, because anything left, we want to make sure we get a hold of it. But let's just see what your intensity is now as you discuss it. Would you mind doing that?
Sure. Probably of the 3, the toughest issue was coming to a village and seeing so many bodies. Actually, my experience was in Cambodia, not Vietnam. And the Khmer Rouge, there was a couple Khmer Rouge groups, and they were overthrowing the Cambodian government. And April '75, they succeeded in doing that, and they went to different villages and basically annihilated the people in the village. They would destroy the entire village.
How does it feel when you say that on a scale of 0 to 10?
Well, actually, I'm a 0.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm a 0, and we would go to the village. You could hear the people screaming at nighttime, and when you would go in the village, in one incident, which I had relayed to you and Adrian, was that there was so many, about 20 dead bodies, and they were all decapitated. And
how do you feel now when you talk about those 20 decapitated bodies?
I'm at a 0.
Okay, now I remember rather clearly the other day you were up around a 7 or an 8.
Well, probably when I said the bodies, and that part stays in my mind, I'm sure I was at a 10, because even though I was able to talk about it over the years, because I've been in therapy since '78, it still was very intense.
Okay. But it's not intense now when you speak about it?
No.
Okay, I would like to get a little more detailed on that. I'd like to get below the surface of just saying there were 20 decapitated bodies to see what your intensity is. And if it becomes uncomfortable, by the way, I want to know that right away, okay? But can you describe in more detail any one of them?
Sure. Well, actually, they wore black uniforms. And their heads were dismembered from their body, and the heads were.
You mean like here was a body laying here, and there was a head right next to it, or something, and
within 6 feet of them, there was just a pile of heads and a pile of bodies.
Okay, were there expressions on their faces?
Well, what I can only remember is just a blank, because obviously I didn't stare too long.
As you speak about this now in more detail, are you still a 0, or are you getting up to something?
I think I'm a 0.
You think you're a 0?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I wouldn't have told you the fact where the heads were, or the fact that the blood was all over the place, and they were thin. Their bodies had swollen from the heat. It was the stench. It used to be I could smell the stench, and now that I'm talking about it, I can't smell the stench.
Oh, you can't smell the stench now? Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, you told me when we first started talking about any of these things that you could see, hear, smell, taste. Did you not say that to me?
Sure. When an event, an intrusive thought, or what I call a negative thought, or a memory of my Cambodian experience, sure, I could smell the gunfire. I could smell the green woods. There's a smell of blood you can smell.
Can you smell that now as you talk about it?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I'll tell you what's interesting about that. I'm going to tell you what some other vets have told me that have dealt with PTSD in this process. And I don't say this to put words in your mouth. I say this to ask you if you think this would be accurate. Okay. They will tell me that while they do not forget the memory is still there. They can still recount it as well as they ever could. The emotion is neutralized, and one fellow said it's like talking about a shopping trip. Now, is that accurate as far as you're concerned?
Last night, actually, I tried to think of a couple of the intrusive thoughts that I had told you, and it was very. Numbing's not the word. I was very calm. It was just as if it didn't want to enter my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not even sure that the fact that the memory was still there. It was a vague memory. It wasn't something that I even wanted to. Because normally when I go to bed, I sit there, and it takes 3-4 hours for me to go to bed, even on quite strong medication. And although it was hard for me to get to sleep, it wasn't the negative thoughts in the past that were there. And probably I tried to get them there because they've been with me so long, and I couldn't get them there. Okay.
Now the odds are really high, Rich, that those thoughts you worked on just simply aren't going to be part of your intrusive thoughts anymore. Now if they come back, what that really means is that there is some piece of all that we haven't addressed in your thought process while we've been doing the tapping, and something else comes up some other day and you'll get some intensity about it. You just need to tap again. But chances are, for those intrusive thoughts, it's pretty much behind you. That's our experience anyway.
I hope so.
Well, that's our experience with 80 or 90% of the people. That's probably conservative once we've gotten it down. Okay?
Well, when I came in the door, I would figure if you could just give me 5% relief, it would be worth it.
Yeah.
And it's a lot higher than I thought possible.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something else, because I want to go through another thing or two with you while I have you. The other thing that we find is quite often when we take care of, well, let's put it this way. Let me ask you a question. How many, just estimate for me, how many intrusive thoughts do you think you have? How many scenes, how many events that happened in the Vietnam area do you think are contributing to your PTSD?
Well, actually, I think from day one right on through, because every day was a different event. And even if just being there and being around war. Although they're not in levels of 10, but I'm sure they're levels of 2 or 3. But there's quite a few of them at level 10. There's probably, 100.
Oh, 100?
I mean, I couldn't even count.
How many intrusive thoughts? Well, we dealt with 3 the other day.
Right.
Since then, how many intrusive thoughts have you dealt with on your own?
Yes, last night I dealt with 3 of them.
3 of them.
One was the firefight that I had just mentioned to Adrian, and the other 2 were probably in between a low thought like that and a high thought of seeing a village being slaughtered.
Okay, so that's 3 we dealt with before, and then 3 you did on your own, so that's 6 altogether. And you've gotten those down to a point where they seem to be behind you? Emotionally
I would say emotionally they're behind me. In fact, the first 3, it was very difficult for me even to get to think about last night, because I was trying to think about it, because I hadn't been able to sleep for so many years, so I know this is just a routine I have to go through. I mean, I know I'm going to have to lie in the bed. I know I'm going to have to think about all these intrusive thoughts. And even though I couldn't get to sleep, it wasn't the intrusive thoughts that were stopping me. I think it was maybe the frustration that I couldn't get those intrusive thoughts back to the level that they normally are. They became part of my family, I guess, and maybe it's kind of hard for me to explain, but
It's kind of a habit, though.
it's exactly what it was. It was a habit, and I couldn't sleep last night, but it wasn't because of the intrusive thoughts.
Right.
I'm laying there and I'm thinking, well, something's missing. It's kind of, it's like I can't figure it out, but I was not sleeping because I'm trying to figure out why I wasn't the same.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. So that you know, it is also our experience that if you have, I think I sort of figured this out when you were talking, something like 100 tens.
Oh, there's hundreds and hundreds of events.
Okay. But if you have, let's just say a number of 100 tens, quite often you don't have to go through each and every one of those to eventually get relief on all of them. You've now done 3 with us, 3 on your own. If you did 1 every day or 2 every day from this point forward, after a while, typically, you only need to take care of 10 or 15, 20 maybe, and it sort of generalizes. You'll have a hard time finding the ones you haven't worked on. So I would like to spend a little more time with you on other ones that you haven't worked on yet. Let's do it right here. You have it now?
Yes.
Okay, and again, is it sort of like a short movie of 2 or 3 minutes, or?
It's only, it's about a minute movie.
Okay. So like we did before, what I'd like to have you do is to start telling us about it, but start before, something before the minute movie, and build into it. The moment you get any intensity whatsoever, like a 2 or a 3 or something like that, I want you to just tell me immediately, and we'll start working with it. This is not a game of how much pain you can have. It's a game of how little pain you can have.
Well,
okay.
Actually, I was starting thinking before I came in here, and it was very difficult for me to get to a 10, even on some of my thoughts that would normally be a 10.
Okay, that's part of the generalization going on. But you've got one you can get to a 10.
I can, well,
Or as high as you can.
I could probably get to maybe a 6 or a 7.
And normally it would be a 10.
Yes.
Okay, but let's test it. I'd like to have you start telling the story, something before it began, and then build into it, and whatever intensity you get as you talk about it, you'll let me know.
Okay. While we... Let me think of a couple here. Okay, while we were in Cambodia, while the sun starts coming up, there's a fog that goes across the land, and you have to realize there was so many. They would go and destroy villages after villages. I guess we now believe they slaughtered in excess of 1 million people. A lot of
What's your intensity now when you say that?
Probably only about a 4 or 5.
Okay, but let's stop right there. Let's deal with that one, okay? You don't have to rub the sore spot or sore. Tap right here, okay? See, I accept myself even though I have this emotion.
I accept myself even though I have this emotion.
Over here, you might just give it a little tougher thump than you gave it, okay? Okay. All right, tune back into where you were when you were like a 4 or whatever it was. Are you still a 4?
No.
And what had you said? That you talked about slaughtering millions of people, I think were the words.
Well, over the length of a few years, we found out that they had killed so many people. In the first...
So are you a 4 now?
0.
0, go ahead.
Initially, when it happened, I know that first week they slaughtered over 50,000 people, and it just seemed like everywhere we went there would be bodies all over the place.
And how does that feel when you remember those bodies?
I'm at a 0.
A 0? Okay, go ahead.
One of the incidents that I can remember was when the sun comes up, there's so much fog, and a lot of the bodies weren't buried, but some bodies were only put, just dirt would be piled on top of them, and it would always rain, and I'm probably going up to about a 4 or 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a particular scene you're seeing? It's the bodies?
Right.
Okay. All right. I accept myself.
I accept myself
even though I have this emotion about these bodies.
Even though I have this emotion about these bodies.
Okay, now as you remember those bodies, are you still was it a 4?
Yeah, I'm at a 0.
You're a 0. All right, go ahead.
And what would happen is that it would rain so hard, it would be so hard that you could hardly see in front of you. But in the morning, I can remember a light rain that would get underneath and wash the bodies and would push them right out of the ground. So it looked something like out of when you were a child and you were in a horror film.
How does that feel to say?
I feel all right.
Is it a 0, 1?
0.
It's a 0, okay, all right. What is it normally? Is that the intense part of the scene?
Seeing the body rise, yes.
Yeah, that's the intense part?
Right. The rain just gets underneath of it and washes it right out.
And it's a 0 emotionally for you?
Right now it is. Normally it's not.
Okay, normally it's a 10 or something?
Normally that would be a 10 thought.
Okay,
it would stop me from sleeping.
Yeah, and you have nightmares from time to time?
Yes.
How often? I forgot. You told me before, but it slipped my mind.
Well, the thoughts are there every night. I mean, they're there every night.
Okay. And is that scene a part of your nightmares from time to time?
Yes.
Okay. How often do you have the nightmares?
Every night.
Do you have one last night?
No.
Night before?
Yes. No, I haven't had them in the last 2 nights. I have to think now for a minute.
Well, okay. Now this is important to recognize, though. If you haven't had a nightmare for the last 2 nights and you're used to having them every night, it was 2 nights ago you started doing the tapping, or 2 days ago. Okay. This scene that we were just doing, we've gotten to the intense part now?
Yes.
Okay. I want you to close your eyes if you would, and I'd like you to mentally go through that entire scene, stopping at each one of the points where you had some emotional intensity. And I want you to literally try to get yourself intense about it. I want you to imagine these things in the most vivid terms that you can. I want you to make an effort to get intense on each of those points and tell me where you get it.
A 0.
On all of them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Chances are you're going to be 0 or close to it. I mean, chances are we've taken one more intrusive thought and put it in the bag. You will be interested to learn that I spoke with Rich 2 months after this session, and his height phobia still had not returned, his intrusive thoughts were all 0s, and his sleep at night expanded from an average of 4 hours per night to about 7. This is typical of these procedures, and the normal expectation is that the problems will not return. Adrian helps our next veteran, Ralph, get beyond a traumatic memory in a matter of minutes. He also has a past problem with cocaine, but has been drug-free for almost a year. After Adrian completes her part, I teach him how to neutralize all addictive cravings by using his desire for a cigarette.
You mentioned to me that you went over a cliff in a Jeep, was it?
Yeah.
If you bring that up into your mind, Ralph, can you get intense reliving that?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about that. Tell me a little bit about the story, and then I'm going to stop you. I don't want to cause you any pain because this process is really pain-free. But I want to have you get into it so that we can again measure the success of it. So tell me about what happened.
We were on maneuvers, and the maneuvers were ending, and we had to rendezvous on the beach to board a ship to go back to Okinawa. The field mechanics had tried to fix the brakes on this Jeep. I was in a 106 recoilless rifle platoon, and they had a 106 recoilless rifle mounted on top of the Jeep. I told the lieutenant that the brakes hadn't been fixed and we had no brakes on the vehicle. He told me that we had to get to the beach anyway. I said, sir, you're going to give me an order to drive this Jeep? He said, yes, that's an order. So he and I got in there. He was riding the passenger seat. Had a gunner on the back. Going down a dirt road, had about a 90-degree left turn. As I went into the turn with that 106 rifle on top of the Jeep was top heavy and it began to slide.
Stop right there. On an intensity of a 0 to 10, how intense does that make you? How anxious?
About 7.
A 7. Okay, I'd like to work on that. So what we're working on now is you first realizing that something was going wrong.
Yeah.
Am I correct? I'd like you to rub that sore spot. Can you find that?
Right in here.
Did you get it?
Yeah.
All right, rub that, and while you're rubbing that, say, I accept myself even though I have this anxiety.
I accept myself even though I have this anxiety.
Baby finger, collarbone. Okay, let's stop. Has that anxiety, think about, you're just realizing that something's wrong, and you can feel it going top heavy. What's the anxiety? If it was a 7 before, what is it now?
Just reduce.
Down to?
I can talk about this without anxiety.
Without any anxiety?
It's reduced very much.
Is it to a 0?
Not quite to a 0.
All right, I'm going to do some more work on it. Have your eyes open, and baby finger, and collarbone. Okay. Is there anything there now? That's good. Any anxiety? Now you're laughing about it. No, is there...
This is amazing.
Okay, do you... Tell me...
Excuse me.
Okay.
I get a calming effect that runs through my body when I do this.
Do you?
Yeah.
Good. So you get a calming effect in the rest of your body. All right, let's go back to the... Tell me again, you're realizing... Let's pick the story up from there.
Well, the Jeep started sliding to the side of the road, and as it went to the side of the road, it hit a tree, bounced off the tree, and over into the air, over this cliff.
Let's stop there. Did that do? Is there any?
It doesn't do anything.
Okay, go ahead.
This is really cool. Usually I talk about this. I tighten up in my stomach.
And you're not feeling any of that now?
I'm
Good.
not.
Wonderful.
Anyway, we went flying through the air. And the Jeep landed about the distance that we're sitting right now from landing on top of me. But I was buried in dirt.
Well, think about that. Does that do anything to you?
It doesn't do anything.
All right, go ahead.
This whole experience doesn't do anything now.
Is this the first time you've been able to talk about it then and not have that happen?
Without getting kind of uptight about it.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I have a problem with my left shoulder. Sometimes I talk about it, the shoulder acts up. But I'm not feeling anything here.
Great.
At any rate, this captain ran up to me and stuck his hand in my mouth and pulled the dirt out. Let's stop me from strangling to death. And then I was meted back to the hospital. But
and that's...
They thought the back was broken, and he gave me morphine right away for the pain. And I remember I was very afraid about my back being broken, but it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you got through that story.
Yeah.
And we talked about the feeling, the Jeep. You realized it was going to go out of control, started sliding on you, you go over, and the Jeep narrowly hits you.
Yeah.
Lands just a few, sounds like a foot from you or something.
About a foot, yeah.
Yeah, and you're still okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, wonderful that you're able to get through this. Chances are, if that's caused you any anxiety, that won't come up again. Chances are that issue is not going to come up again. And indeed in retelling the story for someone, if you chose to do that, chances are we've gotten it. But you'll be the best test for that.
Well, I normally don't tell the story because it's not a big experience, but for me it's a big experience.
Sure.
Because it makes me feel very uptight, and I distinctly get pain in my left shoulder when I start talking about this story. I don't feel anything over here right now.
Good.
Ralph then left with instructions to come back and see us when he was climbing the wall for a cigarette. We wanted his craving to be very high so we could demonstrate the power of these techniques when applied to addictive cravings.
Now you want a cigarette, is that what I understand? You've been out for a while and you will come back and Ralph wants a cigarette. On a scale of 0 to 10, Ralph, right now, what is your...
8.5 or 9.
8.5. You already answered the question. I asked you the question, you got it, huh? Put this thing under your nose a minute, okay? And just see if that's still an 8.5 or a 9.
Yeah.
Take a dry drag on it and tell me if it's still an 8.5 or 9, or if it's getting any higher or lower or what.
It's not getting any lower.
Okay. Is it getting any higher?
No.
Okay, still an 8.5 or 9.
Yeah.
8.5 or 9. Okay, I'm going to hold it right here because see the point is here we want you to keep your thoughts on that cigarette about how good that would really be.
Okay.
That's not going to be hard to do, huh?
No, not at all.
I want you to rub that sore spot for me. Okay. And say, I accept myself even though I crave that cigarette.
I accept myself even though I crave a cigarette.
Again.
I accept myself even though I crave a cigarette.
Again.
I accept myself even though I crave a cigarette.
Okay, now tap on your collarbone and take a look at that cigarette while you're doing that, okay? Now tap under your eye. Tap on your collarbone. Okay, under your arm. Okay, on your collarbone. Think of how good that cigarette would be. Under your eye. Okay, now stop there a second. Let's just take a little reading here. Are you still an 8.5 or a 9?
No.
What would you call it? What would you call your desire level right now?
About 5.
Okay, tap the gamut spot on the back of your hand. Okay, a little more rapidly. There you go. Okay. Now look at this cigarette. Okay. Now close your eyes and open your eyes and hard down right and hard down left and roll them in a circle. Like that. Keep tapping though. Keep tapping. Okay. Other direction. Okay. Happy birthday. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Happy birthday. Okay, now tap on your collarbone. Tie that cigarette, okay? Under your eye. On your collarbone. Under your arm. Okay, on the collarbone. And under your eye. Now, what was your number of 5? You went from 8.5 or 9 to a 5?
Yeah.
Is there still a 5?
No, it's getting less.
What would you say?
It's not reduced. It's not gone, no.
Not gone? Okay, but what would be your best number?
3, 2.
3 or 2?
Much less.
Okay, rub the sore spot and say this, I accept myself even though I still crave that cigarette.
Even though I still crave a cigarette.
I accept myself even though I still have some of this craving left.
I accept myself even though I still have some craving left.
I accept myself even though I still have some craving left.
I accept myself even though I still have some craving left.
Okay, on your collarbone. Okay, under your eye. On your collarbone. Under your arm. On your collarbone. And under your eye. Okay, are you still at 2 or 3?
No, not really.
Well, on a scale of 0 to 10, how desirous are you right now of having a cigarette?
I could do without it.
Okay. Does that mean...
I still have a little urge for a cigarette, but nothing like when I came in here.
Okay, I understand that, but is it... And I know you can't give an exact number, but is it like a 1 or a 2 or a 0? What would you call it?
Like a 1.
About a 1?
Like a 1.
About a 1.
Yeah.
Okay. Here, just hold that there. You just hold that there, okay? Because, you know, that's a good cigarette, right? Put it on your nose for a minute. Put it on your nose for a minute. Tell me if that makes it more than a 1.
No.
Take a dry drag and tell me if that makes it more than a 1.
No.
Still a 1, okay. All right, look at me. Close your eyes. Open your eyes. Hard down right. Hard down left. Roll them in a circle. Here, just do it this way. Okay. Other direction. Okay. Happy birthday. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Happy birthday. Okay, tap on the collarbone. under your eye, collarbone, under your arm, collarbone, under your eye. Okay, now take a look at that cigarette. Tell me.
I like this.
You like this?
Yeah.
Well, do you want it or not?
No. I don't have a craving for a cigarette now.
You don't have a craving for a
No, I
cigarette?
don't have a craving for a cigarette.
Now see, here's the beauty of this, and I want to thank you for doing this on camera, okay? This is the beauty for anybody who wants to quit smoking.
Yeah.
You now have a choice. Whenever you get the craving, once you memorize this process, you can do that, and you now know you can take that craving in a few moments and get it to a point where you can walk around and walk by it.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean the craving won't come back.
I understand that, but I do have a choice right now. That's right.
You have a choice, and you'll have a choice the next time you have a craving,
Yeah.
and the next time, and the next time, and after a while, as you know, when you quit smoking, pretty soon the cravings don't come back because you get over the hump and off you go.
All right.
In the meantime, by doing this, you're also, and this is really important in this, is what you're doing is you're taking the anxiety that is really driving the reason you need to smoke the cigarette. You're reducing the anxiety way down. I mean, without the anxiety, you don't have the need for the cigarette.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you feel now on an anxiety level?
I'm very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
When you walked in here, how were you on an anxiety level?
I was anticipating a cigarette.
Yeah, which means on a scale of 0 to 10 for anxiety, what might you have been?
About the same as the craving, about a 9.
About a 9, something like that.
Yeah.
So what's the craving now?
I don't have a craving now.
Okay, but now what I want you to try to do, I want you to try to get your craving up. So let's take that, I want you to imagine that thing lit, okay? Imagine that thing lit, and I want you to put it in your mouth, and I want you to take a dry drag and inhale, you know, like you're going to inhale that, okay? Okay, and put it under your nose and smell it. Okay, try to get your desire up.
I'm not going to be able to.
You're not going to be able to?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
No.
Okay, now, but I do want to emphasize something. That does not mean you're over your cigarette
I
addiction.
understand that.
Okay.
But it gives me a choice right now.
It gives
That's
you a choice
important.
right now, and every time you have a craving, it gives you a choice right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
It's up
very
to you.
important to me.
So it's up to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
You like that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, you normally smoke, right?
After we do a group, we normally go outside all of us together and smoke.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So I went outside when I left here, figuring that would give me the craving, because I figured I could come right back in 5 minutes with a craving. But I didn't. I never got the craving to smoke. So I went to the 2 o'clock group. That's 2 to 3.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the end of that group, toward the end of that group, I started feeling the desire for a cigarette.
Okay. All right. All right.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to point out to you is that this is good not only for cigarettes, it's good for addictions of any kind. It's good for biting fingernails, it's good for cocaine, it's good for people who have gambling addictions, it's good for any kind of an addictive behavior, be it substance oriented or not. The same thing will work across the board.
Next, you will hear an interview with Anthony, who has been through many years of conventional therapy since his Vietnam encounters. Listen as he tells you about his experience with these techniques.
And you are an outpatient here, meaning you've spent your time here before as a full-time resident in-house, if you will.
Yes.
And you're now in the community, and then you come back from time to time.
I come back on a regular basis.
On a regular basis, okay. And so you came back and you heard us give a presentation 3 or 4 days ago about the Callahan techniques and tapping and that kind of thing.
Right.
And since then, we've had some experiences. You came in and visited with us once. I don't want to put all the words in your mouth. Why don't you tell us in your words, or tell me, what happened? What was your first experience? And we'll start with that.
My first experience with the tapping, we tried out my fear of crowds and going into crowded places. And I have this thing about ultra awareness of harm. It's a fearful nature that I have.
Triggered by the Vietnam experiences.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Kind of keeps me isolated and away from crowds, especially restaurants.
Sort of like you're looking over your shoulder all the time.
Yes, I got to see what's going on.
Yeah. Okay. So when you go in a restaurant, if you were to go, you would sit with your back to the wall so you could see everything. Okay.
See that, put my back to the wall, see the exits, to who's coming in and who's leaving, and to look around to find out if there's any potential danger within the crowd. And well, we started the technique, you remember?
Right, sure.
And this was the exciting part of it, because I was skeptical. I had heard about this a long time ago, and I was interested, but not until now that I get the opportunity to try this out. And I wanted to do it, and I was totally amazed. In fact, I'm really elated, because well, we went to the restaurant.
Indeed, we did.
And
that was yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was quite, well, I didn't want to go in, you know, and we had tried the tapping method, and I felt comfortable, and then different thoughts would come up. And there was one especially that happened that came up because of the death of my brother. My brother, he passed away in December of '92, and it's been an extremely sensitive issue. I can even talk about this freely. This is how wonderful this is.
You couldn't do this before?
No. I mean, not without getting choked up to a point.
On a scale of 0 to 10, how emotionally intense would you get before doing this tapping when speaking about your brother's death?
Well, before I came in the program, it was always a 10. While I came into the program, and after I started working on the issues, it would relatively remain about a 6, 7, sometimes get to a 10. And while we were at the restaurant, going into the restaurant, we were doing the tapping technique. So this way I could just get in the front door. But the issue with my brother started to come up again. It was like it switched from the restaurant to my other sensitivity.
Right, sure.
And we worked on that. And now I can remember many of the scenes, but I don't feel the pain no more. I mean, even as I speak of it now, you know, I feel like there's something missing, you know, that grieving, that ultra heaviness I had. Well, I don't really miss that. In fact, I'm happy that I don't have it.
Yeah, sure.
I feel wonderful.
It's interesting because
I really feel wonderful.
You can separate the emotional sting, if you will, from the memory itself. You can have all the memories you want of your brother and the death, and all the good bad memories and bad memories, but the emotional sting, the negative emotional sting, can be separate from the whole thing. That's the experience, I think.
It's exactly, you know, yes, it is exactly the way it is.
Okay.
You know, it was a terrible experience for me. You know, and as I think about a lot of the other, I've been working on myself also with the tapping, because I have a very big issue with loss of friends, especially the friends I had in Vietnam. A lot of them were, you know, were so dear to me, close to me. You know, it was, whenever I used to think, I would never even talk about this unless I was under some kind of therapeutic guidance. Right. And now, I'm amazed. I can't believe it. I can't believe it, you know. And I've been telling some of my other Vietnam buddies, you know, and they don't believe it, you know, and they says, well, it must have been all that therapy you had. I says, partially so, but you know, even though I did have all this therapy, and there was still residual. I don't feel the shock no more. I don't feel like the sword through my heart, the pain associated with it.
How many years of therapy have you been in through working with these issues?
Since 1978.
And is this the first time you felt this free?
Yes. I mean, absolutely so. 100% so. You know, I think it was my time to meet you guys. I think it was.
Wonderful.
God's blessed me, I swear to God.
Okay.
You know.
I want to take you back to the restaurant. We were outside the door. I remember this very clearly. This was last night. We were outside the door, and up to that point you said, I'm fine. You were very comfortable. And then I opened the door, and I said, now let's go in. And you went, and in fact your words were, no, I'm frozen here. Remember saying that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay.
It was like,
And then we did some tapping, and then that kind of went away. And then we went right in the restaurant, and I don't think you had a nickel's worth of anxiety from that point forward. Maybe you did. Why don't you describe it, whatever you had?
no, you're right. Not even a nickel's worth of anxiety.
And
I chose my own spot, remember?
yeah. Which was your back to almost everybody.
Yeah, I wanted to test this. I just didn't want to think that, you know, I was tapping on myself, and it was just a distraction. Because I know my awareness level would come back. You know, my awareness level was still there, but it was there in a good nature rather than one that would make me have paranoia, you know, and feel that I'm being gazed upon or a target. Nobody likes to be a target,
Yeah.
especially if you've been in combat. You know what it's like, and it's something that I've never lost. Well, I can't say that anymore. Well, I tested it. I sat with my back to where the entrances were, in the middle of the room, and hold on to your hats. I enjoyed myself. I really enjoyed myself.
Yeah, you did. We just sat there and had a very casual dinner, as a matter of fact.
That's right. I really enjoyed myself. I can't say enough about this.
We turn now to Robert and work with his toughest intrusive memories. Please note that he has been through conventional therapy for almost 30 years and still describes his PTSD as severe.
And that's why you have less emotional reaction, even though it's by no means done. You still describe it as severe. Okay.
Right, because I have certain memories that are very severe that I just, when I start thinking about them or when something comes up where I'm remembering them, I do anything I can to forget them.
Of course. What we're going to do here is deal with that energy system directly. Not with the memory. We use the memory kind of like a guide. But we're going to deal with the energy system. And the way we do that, and why this appears so strange to people, is we have you tap on certain points of your body, under your eye, over here and here, and under your arm and here. And we have you do a bunch of things which are seemingly strange and appear to be nothing like psychology, nothing whatsoever like it. And yet it really is, because what you will find if we're successful here is you'll find as we tap on this, you're going to find some of the emotional reactions you have subside. And get less and less and less. To the point where we've had many people sitting in your chair here in the last couple of days who have gotten over headaches, they've gotten over a lot of anxious feelings, they've taken a lot of their intrusive memories, and they've been able to talk right through from beginning to end with no intensity whatsoever, whereas before on a scale of 0 to 10 it went to a 10, bang, like that, just like I think yours went quickly, okay?
Insomnia, where they have slept.
Yeah, we've had people, we just, Phil right here had insomnia, and we just had him give a testimonial, and he's been sleeping fine, and so on. So anyway, I can't give you promises, but I will tell you this does not hurt. And so we'll give it the experience. We won't have you doing things which seem strange. I'll have you tapping here, for example, and among other things, rolling your eyes around in your head and humming, like a song, Happy Birthday. That's to get your right brain involved. That's the creative part. And then counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's to get your left brain involved. But and we'll have you rubbing a sore spot, and we'll have you saying some affirmations like, I accept myself even though I have this thought, or even though I have this feeling or something. So you just have to kind of flow with us, okay?
Next we have Robert pick out his most intense memory. He labels it the kid, and we start balancing the energy system by using affirmations and tapping on certain body locations. It comes down from a 9.5 to a 5 to a 2.5 to a 0. To this point, we have just addressed this memory in a general way. He is now ready to tell the story.
Do you feel comfortable now in discussing it and telling us?
Yeah, because I can kind of separate myself from it now.
Okay. Here's the way we do it, though, okay? Remember, we're not into having big pain.
Right.
Okay. What I'd like to have you do is, in this 1 or 2 minute movie, which has the intense part with the kid in it, I'd like to have you maybe start a little bit before that, where it's comfortable to talk about it, and then start getting into it. And as you get into it, closer and closer to things that might make you intense, if you get intense, you let me know immediately. Say, I'm getting intense now.
Okay.
We want to stop right there and deal with this, okay? So go ahead, start.
And let me just interject this. You don't have to get up to a high number. When you start feeling any emotion about it, let us know.
Okay.
Yeah. Even a 3 or a 4. Even a 3 or a 4, we want to know about it, okay? So go ahead.
I can remember coming into a village and a buddy of mine, the guy that was driving the truck, wanted to stop for some reason. I kind of have a suspicion what he wanted to stop for, but we were stopped outside a bar, and he was inside. I had a kid kept coming up the truck, and I kept telling him to get away, and he kept coming, and I wasn't paying too much attention to him. I figured he was just curious, and then I started looking at him, and I noticed he had a grenade in his hand with a pin pulled.
How do you feel when you say that?
A little anxious, not bad.
Give me a number.
2, maybe 2.5.
Yeah, well, we're going to stop, okay? And you can resume the story in a minute, but we're just, okay. I accept myself, do it yourself. I accept myself even though I still have some of this kid emotion.
I accept myself even though I still have some of this kid emotion. I accept myself even...
Okay, collarbone. Now, go back to that point where you've seen the boy with the grenade with the pin pulled, and tell me if it's still a 2 or 3 or whatever it was.
I can see him, and I'm almost like I'm just watching a movie.
Okay, all right, good. That's what we want. All right, continue on with the story, but be sure you tell me about intensity as you go on, okay?
He came up, he kept coming, and I kept telling him, don't come any closer, drop the grenade, and he kept coming at me, and he was, I remember it now, he was kind of almost like the kid was in a trance. And so I took a rifle and I fired 2 rounds down his feet. The kid still kept coming. And
how do you feel when you say that?
Anxious.
Okay, give me a number.
3 maybe.
3, okay. Rub it yourself. I accept myself even though I still have some of this kid emotion.
I accept myself even though I still have some of this kid emotion.
Okay, tune back into that now. You fired 2 rounds at his feet and he still keeps coming.
Just like I'm watching a movie.
Okay, continue on.
And he kept coming, and I kept trying to... Finally, I didn't have any choice. I had to shoot him.
How's that feel?
Anxious, because I don't like... it's something I didn't want to do.
Now, 0 to 10, where are you?
Probably an 8.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay. I accept myself even though I have this kid emotion.
I accept myself even though I still have this kid emotion.
I accept myself even though I shot the kid.
I accept myself even though I shot the kid.
2 more times.
I accept...
Where are you now?
Probably down to about a 0.
You think you're a 0?
Probably a half a 0.
Okay.
I can see the kid. I can see him laying there dead.
Have you ever been able to see the kid laying there dead and having the emotional response you have now?
No.
0. Has it always been a 10 or something?
It's always been at least a 10.
Okay.
Even though Robert has never been able to tell this story calmly before, we still want to test it. So he is asked to tell it again to see if any emotional intensity comes up.
The story you're telling is the 2-minute movie. The most intense part is shooting the boy?
Yeah, the most important intense part.
So we got the intense part. Yeah. Now, I'd like to have you go back and get into it again, okay? Because see if something else comes out. Do you feel comfortable doing that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
We had pulled into the village. A buddy of mine says, "Hey, I've got to do something. I'll be right back." And I said something about, we should be moving on. We're not supposed to be in the village. The village is restricted. Well, don't worry about it. So we kept on. So he went in and I waited in the vehicle. And I remember the kid kind of looking interested at the truck, and I didn't pay too much attention. I figured, hey, he's just a young kid. He's curious.
How old was he?
5, 6 maybe, if that old. It's hard to tell.
Right.
And then I noticed the kid disappeared for a minute or 2. And I didn't pay much attention. I figured, well, he got bored, or he just didn't want to look anymore. Next thing I know, he's coming from the other side of the building, and he's got something in his hand, kind of behind him. And I can't see what he's got in his hand. He's still quite a ways away, and his hand is kind of behind his back. So finally he gets up, probably 60, 70 feet away, maybe, if that far. And I can kind of halfway see what he's got. He's got his hand, something clenched in his hand. I still can't quite see it, but I can see his hand is clenching something about the size of a grenade. And I figure, okay, he's probably got a rock. He's probably going to throw a rock. No problem. I figure, what's he going to do with a rock? Then all of a sudden, his hand comes out behind me. It's probably, maybe 40 feet away from us, if that far. And he's got a grenade in it. I don't know how the kid had the strength to hold the grenade in the spoon, but he did. So all of a sudden, I'm talking to him, telling him to leave. And then I hear this spoon spring. And
You hear the what?
I hear this ping. He let go of that grenade and the spoon had flung off of it, so it was fully armed. All he had to do was put it at us, and the truck was gone, and I was gone with it. So
how do you feel when you say that?
I really don't feel any emotion, because and so I fired 4 rounds, I guess, down by his feet, kind of giving him a notice, hey, don't come any closer. I've got a weapon, I will shoot you. So he just keeps right on coming. It's like, hey, I'm in a trance, I don't care. So then I fired another round, and I hit him in the shoulder. I figured, okay, I'm going to get him to drop the weapon. Get him to drop the grenade. Hit him in the shoulder. He's going to drop the grenade and grab his arm. He didn't do it. He just kept right on coming like a zombie. So I said, well, I've got to get rid of him now, or he's going to be so close to the truck. It's going to take me.
How do you feel right now?
I really don't feel any emotion at all.
Go ahead.
So I finally raised it up to where it's about even with his head, and I fired 3 rounds, I guess. And all of a sudden he dropped down, the grenade kind of dropped behind him. And it wasn't, maybe 3, 4 seconds.
Firing the 3 rounds, you hit him in the head?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you feel when you say that?
It's almost like I'm watching a movie.
Is it a 0, 1, 2, 5?
Probably a 0, maybe a half.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
And it's like the back of his head. I see the back of his head splatter. And it's like, okay. And then I see the grenade kind of drop out of his hand and roll back behind him. And I hear it explode. Maybe 5, 10 seconds later, all of a sudden here come all these village people tearing out of there. What'd you do to my kid? How come you shot my kid? Never mind, the kid had a grenade, and he almost killed a couple of people in the little building.
The grenade did or did not go off?
The grenade did go off. It had rolled back behind him probably 20, 30 feet and went off, kind of behind a well.
How did you feel when the people came out and were yelling at you?
I was anxious because I didn't know whether I was going to have to shoot.
How do you feel now?
Now I'm really, they're doing what they thought. They didn't understand what was going on.
Are you feeling the anxiousness now?
Not really, no.
Having finished with his most intense memory, we then helped Robert neutralize his second most intense memory. This one had to do with the wiping out of a village. We used the same technique and got the same result, that is, 0 emotional intensity. We tune in now at the end of this second intense memory as Robert inadvertently pays these techniques the ultimate compliment. He yawns and says he is bored. In normal social situations, this may be considered rude, but we are delighted. Remember, he is dealing with traumatic memories that have haunted him for decades, and cause him nightmares.
I don't feel anxious at all.
Good. All right, great. Go ahead.
And I can remember, you know, the dozer digging a big hole. I can remember him digging a big hole and just shoving people in it.
Why did you yawn?
Boredom, maybe, because I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking how many times I've seen it in the movies, how many times I've seen it depicted in TV.
It was an interesting reaction, and the reason I asked you that was quite often people, when they do this, they get so relaxed as a result of tapping the energy system.
Yeah, well,
they literally start to lose, they think they're losing energy, but what they're doing is they're being very relaxed in a way that they've never been before, if they can remember. Does that fit for you?
Yeah, because I've never, you know, really felt like, okay, hey, it happened. It's just like I'm watching a movie.
I want you to do something for me, okay? I want you to go back to the first scene, and I want you to imagine shooting the boy, and tell me what kind of emotional intensity you have about that.
Boredom.
Boredom.
Yeah.
Okay. That's better than the other one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. You have to get going.
Yeah.
One final visit with Robert. He came in for another session the next morning and reported that he had had his best night's sleep in 5 years. I then tested the kid emotion one more time to see if the passage of 24 hours had brought anything back. Please notice that he has no trace of it left.
That, it doesn't bother me at all. It
doesn't bother you at all?
No.
Even the part where you shot the boy in the head?
No, because I look at that like, hey, I had to do it. It was me or him. Now I'm looking at like, okay, it's him or I. There's no two ways. There's no two ways about it.
Now, what's really interesting for any other vets or anybody else watching this is we did this procedure yesterday, and the parts of it that we directly addressed with the tapping, you don't have any emotional intensity over.
Not really, because I'm looking at it from I'm looking at it from a rational point of view.
We turn now to an interview with Philip, who discusses his experience with these techniques.
Right now, regarding PTSD.
Yes.
And so you've had some of the traumatic, intrusive memories and all that goes with that.
Yes.
And so we've been dealing with that. And so while we haven't been on camera dealing with these things, you have been experiencing some of these things. And one of them was a headache. I mean, you got some relief from headaches, is that correct?
Yes.
Why don't you tell us about that? How bad were they to begin with? What did you do, and how did they change?
Just to give you an example, this morning I went for breakfast, and we were conversating over this practice, and it just came to my mind that I might just practice it at that moment, and I practiced it, and I was just amazed how it just disappeared.
Okay, so you had a headache,
yes,
right? And you did the tapping,
right?
And then it went away. On a scale of 0 to 10, how bad was the headache before you started doing the tapping?
I would say about an 8.
About an 8, and did it go to a 1 or a 2 or a 0?
It was 0.
Okay, you also mentioned to me earlier something about anxiety.
Yes.
What was your experience there?
Well, at the time when on the first demonstration, when we were going through that as a group, I had anxiety at that time, and when we were going through the tapping process, it vanished.
Okay,
like a little miracle.
Yeah. How intense was the anxiety? You know, when you first started doing the tapping, before you did the tapping, how intense was that anxiety? On this
I would say about a number 5.
About a 5.
Yeah,
okay.
It wasn't a real heavy anxiety, but I was anxiety, you know, and anxiety tends to elevate.
Sure.
Until it changes into something else. But anyway, it was about a 5, and I was just amazed. Because I was questionable whether this really worked or not.
Of course, everybody's skeptical.
Yeah, right.
It's so strange. We also dealt with your anxiety about getting up on a ladder. You had a focused reaction. If I recall it right, you were getting some some feelings in your feet and was it your hands?
Just some jittery.
So yeah, some jittery feelings just as you thought about it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so that was on a scale of 0 to 10. I forgot. How intense was that jitteriness when we first
I
started?
think it was around 8 or 9. It was pretty high.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. Anyway, we started doing this, and the jittery feeling fell, I believe, and so did the feelings in your feet and hands. Why don't you describe what that was?
Well, as we went through the first process, the first time I didn't feel, and then the second time it started dropping, and then the third time it dropped less. I think we did like about 5 times, and it just disappeared.
One thing that Philip shared was his insomnia.
Oh, I forgot.
I want to talk about.
Thank you. Yeah, insomnia. You did have some insomnia before we met, and you've had some relief on that. Why don't you explain what that is?
Oh, well, okay. Prior to going to sleep, I had the problem where I wouldn't sleep. And then I was given instructions to do this before actually going to bed.
The tapping, you mean?
Right, the tapping, yes. So I did the tapping, and wow, I just fell asleep on my own, you know.
How was your night's sleep last night?
Great.
Did you sleep all night?
Yes, all night.
Great.
Did you take any sleeping pills this time?
Without the pills.
Okay, and normally you take sleeping pills?
Yes.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Listen, you're speaking to other vets out there who might be skeptical as well as you were. Would you ask or would you suggest they try it?
No, definitely.
Yeah.
I sure would.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Thanks,
Phil.
so much.
That was really nice. Thanks. Gary's PTSD symptoms include minor hallucinations, anxiety attacks, stress, depression, numbness, and headaches. In this session, Adrian uses EFT to address some numbness in his fingers and his most severe traumatic memory. We start, though, with one of his headaches. He woke up this morning with a severe anxiety headache of the type that always leads to a full-blown anxiety attack. He told us before this session that it was an 8, and he was very stressed about what it would lead to. He used what little of EFT that he had learned from an orientation session and was delighted to get some relief on his own. Here's how he tells it.
You said a rather remarkable story of what you did for yourself using a little bit of the techniques that you were exposed to. Could you share that story with us?
Well, this morning I woke up with a typical anxiety headache, and it was concentrated in my right eye, over my right eye. And I was starting to get really stressed out over it. I didn't want to have a bad day. So I started the technique the best I understood it from your orientation. And it worked. The headache moved from over my right eye to the back of my head right here on the left side. And I did it again, and the headache moved to the center of my head. And then I had just done some the technique with Gary, and the headache has gone away completely.
Good. Good.
Next, Gary told us of some numbness in his fingers that were symptomatic of his anxiety attacks. Adrian applied several rounds of EFT and got it down to a very low level.
It's going away between a 0 and a 0.5.
I'll take
It's
that.
going away. I'll take it too, really, because this morning it was like an 8.
But do you feel any of it right now?
No.
Okay. And that has not happened to you where you felt this free of it for all these years?
Well, I felt this free of it on a good day,
Okay.
an exceptional day.
Okay.
It's about the same as an exceptional day for me.
Good.
Medication and other therapies, and then rest, and just a perfect day.
Okay.
So it's about as good as that.
Good.
Adrian then shifts to work on Gary's most intense traumatic memory. Gary tells her that he was given orders to fire on what was believed to be the enemy, but which turned out to be innocent civilians. She then asks how intense that memory is as he recalls it.
There's a lot of guilt involved.
And the guilt is?
That these were civilians and not enemy, Vietnamese.
All right, when you think about the guilt part, give me a number from...
8.
It's an 8 right now.
Yeah, it's always an 8.
All right, I'd like to work on that.
8 to 10.
Okay.
Right now.
Right now.
Well, it's an 8 right now. It's an 8.
All right, I'd like to work on that.
Okay.
Then, after a few brief rounds of EFT, Adrian finishes the techniques and tests it by having him retell it.
Okay. If it was a 2, what does it feel like?
0.
It's a 0. Okay. Can you go back and tell me about this again? I'd like you to tell me about you secured the landing
Secured an
zone.
LC for the evening, and there was civilian movement outside the perimeter of the LZ, and we laid out some fire.
And you fired.
Right.
And it was pie-shaped type
Right.
pattern.
Patterns.
And it was innocent civilians. Is it still 0?
Still 0.
What does the numbness feel like in your hand?
Numbness, it's still noticeable, but not barely noticeable.
Okay.
Barely.
Okay.
I
And
feel more relaxed.
When
very
you-
relaxed.
good. When you realize now, if you're reliving it, at the time that you shot, did you immediately know it was civilians?
No.
All right. So keep going on with the story.
Well, we didn't know till about daybreak. We went out for a sweep, did a perimeter sweep, and found that it was civilians.
All right. Now you're reliving the scene and you're seeing that it's civilians. What does the guilt feel like now?
I don't feel any guilt.
Okay.
Okay, I want to get a little more intense still. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Okay.
But how did you know they were civilians? Did you see faces?
Right. It was daybreak. The sun was coming up. It was just before the sun came up, and we could tell they weren't. They were carrying personal belongings instead of weapons.
How did you feel then when you saw them?
I was horrified.
How do you feel now when you find them?
I feel okay with it.
0, 2, 3?
I'd say 0.
Okay.
You know, I feel okay with it.
Okay. Is there more to that story, Gary?
There is a little.
Let's go on.
Well, when we saw there were civilians, we were instructed to dig a trench and bury them right there. So there was a lot more guilt.
Sure. What does it feel like to you now?
Much better.
Is it? Give me a number if you can.
It's a 0.
It's a 0.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a 0.
Adrian and I wanted to close this out by giving you a little idea of what didn't make the camera here. We only dealt with a few of the vets that we've shown you on this, and a number of them either couldn't be on the camera for security purposes or whatever. But altogether, we spent time with these men and took care of, it was at least 20, because I counted them, traumatic memories that they had had at the war experience. And in every single case, they went down to 0. I don't think any of them took more than 15 minutes, as I recall it. We're not preaching perfection here, however. That doesn't mean that every time we took somebody's emotional trauma down to 0 that it stayed there. About 80% of the time, that's what happens. About 20% of the time, these memories come back and the emotional sting comes back, in which case you need to tap again. And in our experience, if you keep at it, after a while, it's all gone. But anyway, about 80% of the 20 or so that we did stayed. And a few other vets came to our attention. One of them was Norma. Now, Norma was a lady vet who really didn't have combat. She was just working someplace else, and she'd heard about this, and she came in, and actually you worked with her, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Why don't you explain what happened?
Okay. Norma came to us with a problem with dyslexia, and in speaking with her, I discovered that she also had a horrendous addiction to espresso coffee.
Yes.
She had at least 6 to 8 cups of espresso coffee a day. She even woke up in the middle of the night frequently and would fix herself a cup of coffee. So we worked on that, did the procedure on that, and she came to us the next day and said, I haven't even wanted a cup of coffee since. She's had no cravings for it. I then worked with her dyslexia, and to date, she now has a job where she has to read out loud. as part of this job. She's doing it totally comfortably, and the dyslexia has disappeared. I spoke with her just about a month ago, and that was about 2 months after working with her. And the dyslexia is fine, it's gone, and she hasn't had coffee. So very successful story.
And we realized that both the dyslexia and a coffee addiction had nothing to do with PTSD.
Right.
We only mentioned that to you to let you know there's a wide variety of things that this can be used for, and that happened to be presented to us, so we tried it, and there it is. We dealt with Bill. Now, Bill is a fellow who had a lot of physical pain, including some pain in his shoulder, and every time he raised his arm any more than this, it got to an 8, you know. Took us 3 or 4 minutes, and it went down to a 0, at least for the day. I'm not sure if it came back or not. Often pain like that will come back and you need to tap again. But the important thing is here, we without any drugs or painkillers or any kind of massage therapy or anything, we simply tapped on the energy system and pain went away. Then I think you dealt with Margaret, didn't you?
Oh, Margaret, yes. Margaret was actually not a vet, but she was the wife of a vet. And this happens very frequently where somebody doesn't want us to do anything for them, but they sure have someone who can use our help. So,
like their spouse.
Yeah, pull along the husband or wife and fix her or fix him. So Margaret came to us, and her husband was very concerned because she had such severe migraine headaches. And when she came to us, she had the beginning of a migraine headache. And
expecting it to be a dandy.
Oh yes, usually her headache would be the beginning, and then she would be very sick with it and have to go to bed with that headache. So I did the procedure on Margaret, and all signs of the headache left, and she did not get that horrendous headache that she usually gets.
And there's others, but I just want to mention one more just to kind of round this out. One of the counselors there was named Jerry. And Jerry was beset with a lower back pain, and it was actually almost disabling him. I mean, he tried to get out of a chair like this, and I remember commenting that he looked like he was a 96-year-old man, and he smiled, but he did look that way.
And he was a young man.
Probably 40 years old, that's my guess. At any rate, we did the tapping with him, and inside 7 or 8 minutes, I think, maybe even less than that, he was up and out of his chair and moving around. The pain didn't go to 0, but in his words, it was less than a 1. And all that happened in just moments. So anyway, we have a long list of hundreds and hundreds of these things. We just wanted to kind of give you a little more idea of what was going on that you didn't even see with these vets that we showed on this tape. We're going to close now. We want you to know that this whole process, this whole procedure with these tapping techniques has been a mission for us. It's been very important to bring this to the public and to use them in places where it's so desperately needed, like PTSD and other severe emotional and physical areas. We hope you've seen the power of these techniques, and we want to thank you for spending time with us, and we wish you well.
Thank you.
If you have questions or want information on learning EFT, please contact us as follows.